The Jedi were trained never to give in to their negative emotions, as doing so might open them to the dark side, the almost infinite potential of the Force when warped with fear, anger, and hate. Throughout the galactic catastrophe known as the Clone Wars, the Order saw much which would incite fear, anger, and hate in most living beings, but for the most part, they held to their code like a rock in a dark and rising sea, enduring the black swell and waiting all too keenly for a prophecy which would never be fulfilled, in many of their lifetimes at least. Though, in saying this, not all Jedi were without emotion, and some of the atrocities inflicted upon the galaxy by the enemies of the Jedi Order and Republic struck them from their isolated rock and into the sea, which boiled with fear, anger, and hate. Some atrocities caused them to abandon aspects of their code, to dip their toes in the blackness, and one of such was Dooku's attack on Marani, a war crime which led the Jedi Council to fear and hate the Count, to wish him dead. In this video, we're going to discuss the attack on Marani and just what it meant for the Jedi Order to make the conscious decision to try and end a life, even if it belonged to a Dark Lord of the Sith.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Before we dive into the attack on Marani, it's worth discussing the galactically significant events which preceded it, with the 19 BBY battle for Anaxis being that of greatest importance. As we saw in Star Wars The Clone Wars' recently released and final season, this battle resulted in a crucial victory for the Galactic Republic and a devastating loss for the Separatists. Unable to claim the military powerhouse which was Anaxis, the Separatists were likely seeking a victory to quell their defeat and a resource-rich planet from which they could replenish and expand their forces. Marani was just that. It's also important to note that the battle for Anaxis was brought to life in the Clone Wars, whereas, while it was originally intended to be, the attack on Marani was not. What we know about the attack and the events thereafter comes mostly from Christie Golden's Dark Disciple, a novel based on the 8-part story arc redacted from the Clone Wars. So, what actually happened there? What incited the Jedi Order to fear and hate? As we said, the Confederacy of Independent Systems was after the Republic world of Marani for its natural resources. Due to this, Count Dooku offered the planet's native sentients, the Moran, a chance to surrender to him, which they outright refused, knowing good and well what life under Separatist occupation would have been like. The Moran, a third species with blue muzzles and venomous stingers, had time to contact the Jedi Order and call for help, though very little more than that. Before a force of clone troopers could arrive under the command of Alina Jedi General Chubor, Dooku had his forces descend on the planet and begin laying waste to its capital city. Thousands upon thousands perished in this initial attack alone, though others managed to flee the planet in ships, and after Chubor arrived in a Republic frigate, an in-orbit battle ensued, though Dooku's forces were superior and the fate of thousands of Moran civilian families, younglings included, was well and truly in terrible hands. Jedi General Chubor knew this as well as Dooku did, so the Jedi opened a holographic transmission directly to the Sith, pleading, begging for him to be satisfied with his quick capture of the planet, and to let his ship, the Republic frigate brimming with Moran civilian families, escape. But the Sith Lord's heart was particularly cold that day, and Chubor's plea for Dooku to spare innocent Moran lives, children's lives, was met with an icy response. "Oh my dear General Chubor, you should know by now that in a war, there's no such thing as innocent." Then, before Dooku tore the frigate open to the vacuum of space, he directed his words to the Jedi Council, who he knew was listening to the transmission. "As long as the Republic resists me, innocents will continue to die. Every death in this war lies firmly at the feet of the Jedi." In the lead up to the frigate's destruction, young Moran huddled with their siblings and mothers, their vulpine ears flat against their skull, trembling, knowing full well that their short lives were about to come to a horrific end. And it would have been all the more terrifying for the not-so-brave among them, for the Moran could taste each other's emotion through chemicals in the air, basically like empaths. They could taste the fear, the hate, they could taste their own deaths. Back on Coruscant, the Jedi Council could do nothing but watch. The terrifying final moments of thousands of lives play out before them on the holographic transmission before it too flickered and vanished. After beginning nothing short of the genocide of the Maran species in orbit, the Separatists took full control of the planet, slaughtering Maran on sight and sucking their planet dry, tearing a gaping wound in the Force. Back in the Jedi Temple once more, the tension was building. Emotions were seeping through the masks which every being in that room was wearing, whether they would admit it or not. It was Mace Windu who first suggested what the others were thinking, saying, "Cut off the head and the body will fall," with respect to Count Dooku, who they believed orchestrated the genocide they just witnessed. Grandmaster Yoda responded, "Assassination, Minu?" And then Obi-Wan Kenobi, ever the perfect Jedi, said, "Some things simply aren't within the realm of possibility, not for the Jedi." Solemnly, Yoda agreed with Mace, saying, "Stop him, stop him, stop him, we must." And throughout all of this, the one other Jedi who was driving this plan forward was he who would become Darth Vader, all in that same very year. Now, with Mace's past and with the dragon writhing inside Anakin Skywalker's soul, it's easy to see why these two Jedi would have been for the assassination of Count Dooku. But for Yoda to agree, that truly meant something. This was the Jedi Order itself, with Yoda in this case being the head of the body, coming undone. To take a life, even the life of a Dark Lord of the Sith who just committed genocide, was not the Jedi way. The decision was seeded by fear and germinated by hate, deny it all they would, and the Council knew how it would devastate the Order if one of them committed the deed. So they pinned the responsibility on an unlikely pair, employing the maverick Jedi Quinlan Vos and Dooku's former apprentice and bounty hunter Asajj Ventress to do their dirty work. This tells of the Council's failure, its undoing in itself. They knew Ventress hated her former master. They knew she would use her hate and rage against him, and they may as well have been wielding that hate and rage themselves.
That's no way to treat your apprentice. I should know. Leaving so soon, Master?
You are no match for me without the aid of your monster.
That remains to be seen.
Time to end this, once and for all.
Ultimately, the Kifu Jedi and the Dathomirian assassin failed to slay Count Dooku, though that is irrelevant to our point. With Dooku's attack on Marani and attempted genocide of the Maran species, the Jedi Council reached a boiling point. They just let out their steam in such a subtle way, distracting us, the audience, from the fact that this decision carries about as much weight to it as Anakin's decision to decapitate Dooku in Revenge of the Sith. Though, what do you think? Better yet, what would you do if you were a member of the Jedi Council in that situation? What if you were a member of the Council in some twisted version of reality and the Dark Lord of the Sith was no Sith at all? Let's say Adolf Hitler. Do you think, as a Jedi, ending a life would be ever justifiable, or do you think the moment you make the decision to do so, you cease being a Jedi? Let us know the answer to this deep question in the comment section below. And just before you go guys, as per usual, please do check out those links in the description below if you want to join our Geetsly's gaming network with our Gary's Mod and our Roblox, our main Geetsly's Discord server, and if you want to help support the channel, the Patreon. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.
Et Lozère. Général Kenobi. Ah.